Hi there, and welcome to my naturalistic observation interview presentation on someone in their late adulthood. I am Val Burkell, and I'm currently taking Lifespan online with Colorado Christian University with Dr. Good. I originally asked my mom, who's in her late adulthood, if I could interview her, and she said that her life wasn't as interesting. So she wanted me to ask our neighbor, who she's pretty close with. She goes to church with her, and she also knits with her and some of the other ladies in our neighborhood. So I called her up and got to go over her house last night and interview her, ask her about her life story. And she is currently 79. Um, so it was a very long conversation, but it was absolutely wonderful and enjoyable. We were just sitting in a old-fashioned living room with no distractions except for her sweet little kitten who jumped up and laid in my lap and wanted to play with my pen. But other than that, it was pretty comfortable environment to be able to just talk back and forth. Our neighborhood is about middle class pricing, so not $1 million homes, but also not apartments, but comfortable living for sure. She lived in New Jersey and was born in 1942. Lived in Pennsylvania for most of her childhood. Her dad was an engineer and her mom was a nurse, and they fostered many children when she grew up. Her oldest sister was adopted, so she had five younger brothers and two older sisters. She was the third oldest. She was married for the first time at 17 years old in 1960, had two sons who gave her five grandkids and 10 great grandchildren. She then moved to Connecticut after her divorce. And one of my favorite memories of hers that she shared about her and her siblings were that they loved to play out in the woods all day long. And they would just bring PBJs and Kool-Aid drinks with them and spend all day outside. She also grew up in a one-room classroom, which I've only ever seen on TVs. So I thought that was very interesting. Her career took her to many places as an engineer. She started school for that in 1975 and graduated her associates in 6 years. During her entire career, she also had children. So she was a working mom and a student. She started working for Hamilton Technology, working on timers for artillery. This job took her to China for 6 weeks on and off. She was only there for a year and a half due to the titanium riots of 1989 that brought her back to the States because that was a very scary and dangerous time. Their the chairman of the Communist Party died, and students took the grieving time as an opportunity to put pressure on the government to reform aspects of the economic and political system. But this led to their own government turning on their own people. So it turned into a pretty bad massacre, and this is what brought her back to the States. She started working for a Harley Davidson plant in Detroit, which sent her to Egypt for 4 years. She took classes towards her bachelor's degree and learned how to scuba dive in the Red Sea. She shared with me that the water was so crystal clear that she could look down 130 feet and see a shipwreck from World War II. She then moved back to Pennsylvania to work for General Dynamics as a contract worker. And this took her to England every last 2 weeks of every month, working on the transmission and Bradley fighting vehicles that were made out of high impact aluminum and were light and fast. So they were used to bring hurt soldiers back to the field and take ammunition to larger tanks because they were faster. At 68 years old is when she volunteered to be laid off from this job to get 6 months paying and technically retire. So she earned her master's in project engineering management. She lost her mother when she was 24 years old, which made her angry with her mother that she left her when she needed her the most. She had three young kids when her mom died, and so she felt like it was a very hard time to be without her mom, and her dad was heartbroken. She lost her 5-year-old son not even 2 years later after her mom died. Um, and this is what broke up her first marriage because they just couldn't cope with it, is what she said. Later on in life, her dad died peacefully at 94 years old. She was holding his hand when he took his last breath, and her sister was holding the other. They prayed over him as he left Earth, and this took the fear of dying away from her. She said she never wants her sons to feel the way she felt when her mom died, so her biggest and main goal is to stay as healthy as possible and to live a long life for them. She did grow up in a Christian household, which taught her to accept others. Her parents taught Sunday school at church. Um, but after her son was hit by a car, this really turned her away from God. She was really angry at him and thought that no one deserves to lose their mom and their son within 2 years of each other. But a little over 20 years later, she felt called back, and they found a Presbyterian church that she loved and learned that God was always with her no matter what. She shared with me that being the third oldest, she got all the hand-me-downs. So the only thing she wanted for her 16th birthday was a brand new winter coat that was hers first. And this was probably my favorite memory of hers that I remember her telling me. I also really enjoyed learning about her dad and how her dad raised her. He said the way he would discipline them was very shameful, and he would belittle them by saying stuff like, "Man, I just can't believe a child of mine would not study hard enough to get an A." And I probably would be motivated to do better as well if someone talked to me like that. Her dad sat next to her at her son's funeral and held her, um, and told her not to worry about him because he's in a better place and that his mom is up there taking care of him. He also told her to grieve as long as she needed to, but to not sit in it or to not stay there because self pity is the most wasteful human emotion. This is probably my favorite memory of her dad that she had shared with me. Um, we also bonded over the fact that we both love cats. And so her and her husband's first cat was when they lived in Egypt, and he taught the cat to play fetch and sit while he was recovering from a hip replacement. We also talked about how much she has traveled before, and I asked her if it was a stressful thing for her because I know travel can be stressful for me. But she told me that you can never stress over things that you can't control. You can just do the next best thing. So she shared with me that there was a volcano that was erupting in Iceland when she had to fly to England. But since that was canceled, she just had to, she can't stop that volcano from erupting. So she just had to do the next best thing. um, so this also led her to sharing with me that you should always take opportunities that come your way. So major events that shaped her development was how much stronger her mom dying made her. Um, for more than 20 years, she turned away from God, but when she walked back to her faith, she was reminded that He never turned His back on her, even when she did. She said it was a miracle she got to do the things she did, even while being away from God. She definitely has a strong integrity and integral personality. Um, being raised in a Christian home is what made it easier to always accept others. She said she was always able to stay positive in negative situations. In our book, they described someone as described an incredible developmental path of oppression, hatred, and hurt that ultimately resulted in self awareness, understanding, and compassion. And I felt the same way about my neighbor when I read this. I also wanted to share that Tai and Chandra um, shared that people in their late adulthood stage learn to acknowledge their achievements in life and look back at their life with either contentment or regret. And I would definitely have to say that my neighbor had nothing but contentment looking back on her life. She felt very comfortable talking about it. And she never shared something with me that she regretted. She said that she always took the opportunities that life handed to her. I also wanted to share the definition that Kova and Riva shares with us about personal identity. They say that it is considered as a dynamic creation that includes a well-established, consistent, real, and ideal professional image of the self, providing self-realization, development, inner integrity, personality, determination, adequacy, and stability of its self-concept, regardless of situation changes, identity with profession and professional community, mature solution of professional task. I felt like this just described my neighbor perfectly. She just seems very intelligent and holds that integrity in the way she carries herself. God had made provisions for her. She said that her youngest son needed a lot of attention when her mom died, so that kept her busy, and that so she was never able to develop depression or anxiety, and she feels like that was a blessing in disguise from God. Something she also shared with me is that she had really bad cramps and irregular periods, which led to her uterus being removed when she was 38 years old. And they found cancer in it when they removed it. So she just felt like that was God looking out for her. My experience at first was kind of shocking because she did kind of control the conversation and um, didn't really stop to ask if, if I got what she said or something like that. And I don't really have a personal connection with her, but I definitely had a lot of empathy for her when she shared her losses with me. She has a absolutely wonderful memory. Her cognitive health is like better than mine, in my opinion. And I'm a little jealous because she just remembered things so well. And she talked so like fluently about her life. And she has very funny stories. And I really enjoyed hearing about her dad and her relationship with him. So most of the encouragement, I got a lot of encouragement from her. And I felt like her encouragement was, or some of the encouragement was from what her dad taught her, such as self pity is the most wasteful human emotion. And he also said there's no reason to argue with someone if you don't care about what they think. Um, and she taught me to always take what is given to you. I felt like integrity and identity were the biggest things that I learned from this project. So I wanted to share a verse about integrity that the Bible says, which is Proverbs 11:3. The integrity of the upright guides them, but the unfaithful are destroyed by their duplicity. To me, this means the integrity of to me, this means that the integrity of the Bible is nothing but truth, and you will be successful if you follow that truth. But if not, then you will fail. And then I love 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. I just feel like this is a beautiful example of how God presents us, how he sees us in his image. And it's such a high like standard, and we should care to proclaim the excellencies, or as another version says, the praises of him, because of how wonderful he sees us. So I just felt like this is a huge reminder of how we are born in the image of God. Thank you so much for listening. I know this was very long, and I tried very, very hard to shorten it. But she just shared a lot with me about her life that I wanted to be able to share with you. So I hope you enjoyed it.